All right. I think we will go ahead and get started so we can cover everything today. I know last time we had a long panel, which was awesome, but we didn't have as much time for the open mic time later. So we'll make sure that we get a nice quick start here for today. Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Monroe-DeVita, and we'll go through kind of more introductions here in a little bit. It's great to see all of your introductions, at least in the chat. So feel free, if you're just now joining us, to put your name and your role and where you're from, so you can kind of see where everybody is from and also connect with other ACT team members in other states. We're excited today to have Eric Granholm with us. He'll be presenting on cognitive behavioral social skills training, or CBSST. And then that'll be about an hour of our time today. And then we'll have our open mic time where we ask you to raise your hand and we'll unmute you, and would love to hear from you verbally. So right now you're all muted and we won't be doing any of that. But when we get to the open mic time, that's the time for that, or putting your questions in the chat. Just a quick change that I want to make sure everybody hears in case you leave us a little early today. We have changed up our series a little bit because we have the opportunity to bring in a two-part series for our next two meetings. So we're going to not meet in July, and we're going to meet on May 2nd and June 6th. We're bringing Dr. Sarah Demaray in to talk about principles and practices of risk assessment. She has a tool called the START, or short-term assessment of risk and treatability. And maybe at the very end, Lorna, you can say a little bit more about it. Or do you want to say anything just briefly about it? The tool?
Yeah, she, back with colleagues back in Canada, they had created this. So she certainly doesn't take ownership, but she is a trainer on this tool. And we've trained ACT teams in North Carolina on using it in the past. And it really is a very, it's a very intuitive and structured way to really take inventory of what people's risks are, as well as the mitigating factors that you can build up as strengths, and concerns that you can kind of tamp down as concerns around, you know, history, substance use, the typical things. And what I like about it is it channels down to a treatment plan. So there's action steps involved too. So big workshops really teach you, but this will introduce you to this concept at least.
And we knew an hour wasn't going to do it justice for them, because it's a range of different topics. We originally had violence risk assessment scheduled, and this is actually expanding beyond violence, given your feedback. So, and then we'll hopefully bring Sarah Kapelovich later to come back on violence risk assessment. And then just a couple of quick housekeeping things. Again, you're all muted. All of your video is off right now. We are recording right now. The slides will be available. They're actually available on the website right now. Eric Granholm's are. And then as we record this, we'll have the recording available to you all. It actually is in a couple of days, or within the week, we'll have that up if you want to go back to it. And again, for using the chat is a great place to like make a comment, or as I said earlier, introduce yourself, that kind of thing. But if you have a specific question for us, we'd really like for you then to go up to the Q&A box. And that helps us to log your question and keep track of whether the question was answered. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of all that in the chat. And we can't copy and paste anything from the chat into the Q&A. So it's nice to just have it all in that one place. So again, feel free to comment and that kind of thing. But for any questions you want to make sure we log, put it into the Q&A. And I mentioned earlier that we'll just do a quick introduction and then introduce Dr. Granholm. So I introduced myself earlier. And I'm associated with the Northwest Mental Health Technology Transfer Center and the University of Washington. I have done ACT work for many years now. I'm a clinical psychologist by training. Lorna and I co-authored the tool for measurement of ACT, a newer ACT fidelity tool, and I do training of ACT teams all over the country. And I'll turn it over to you, Lorna, to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so we fortunately get to say ditto after one introduces themselves, because pretty much I do similar things, but in North Carolina, and have the pleasure of having a wonderful team of 11 consultants and trainers that do work in support of ACT, IPS supported employment, and similar services, both in North Carolina and abroad. And I think, as Maria has said, it's awesome because we get to see familiar names, because the work that takes us to your states, you know, we're always learning from you as much as I think we're paid to come in and teach you. So it's really great to have the space to bring you all together.
Thanks, Lorna. And now we have Dr. Eric Granholm. So Dr. Granholm is a professor of psychiatry and the director of the Center for Mental Health Technology at UC San Diego, and the chief of psychology and co-section chief of psychosocial rehabilitation and recovery services at the VA San Diego healthcare system. He has been an active basic and clinical researcher in the areas of neuropsychology. I'm not going to say this next word correctly. Pupilometry.
Pupilometry.
Thank you. Ecological momentary assessment, mobile interventions, and cognitive behavioral therapy in schizophrenia and Alzheimer's disease. He developed the cognitive behavioral social skills training, or CBSST, for schizophrenia and has conducted several CBSST clinical trials, including with ACT teams, which is why we invited Dr. Granholm to join us today. So we'll turn it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and you can go.
Get this to the right place. How's that? See the slides and hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you for inviting me to give this presentation, Maria. Maria worked with me on a clinical trial that we did delivering cognitive behavioral social skills training on served community treatment teams. And it was a huge help. And I'll tell you all about the intervention and why we're talking about it here today. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've worked at the VA here in San Diego for almost 30 years on dual diagnosis programs, psychosocial rehab programs, mostly with people with schizophrenia. And I work here at the Department of Psychiatry at UCSD, developing these interventions and trying to make them very easy to deliver. There's a lot of really good interventions out there that are expensive and hard to deliver. And we made CBSST up to be something that's pretty easy to do and that could be done in places like on ACT teams. It's been delivered by peers, people with all levels of different kinds of education from different disciplines. And our main motivation is to try to get people with serious mental illness access to these evidence-based practices. So that's pretty much what I'm about, and that's what I'm going to tell you about. There's lots of evidence-based practices for people with schizophrenia and other serious mental illnesses. They've been recommended in all kinds of guidelines from the United States, this one called PORT, American Psychological Association, and in nationalized healthcare systems. The United States does have a nationalized healthcare system. It's the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Veterans Health Administration, and that the VA recommends all these interventions here for people with psychosis and then funds them throughout the country at VA hospitals, mostly in psychosocial rehabilitation and recovery centers, or PRRCs, if you've heard about those. So, but every country has healthcare, has recommendations. The UK, Amsterdam, Germany, all these are recommended. Today, we're gonna talk about these last two. Actually, we're really only gonna talk about CBT or even just cognitive therapy because there's not much you can do in an hour. And CBSST is a bundled intervention that includes CBT, social skills training, problem-solving training, and other interventions, but we're going to focus on the cognitive component today. And so what is CBSST? CBSST is a modular intervention. There's 3 modules. Each one's only 6 sessions. So if you really wanted to, you could pull any one of these modules and deliver it to someone in 6 sessions. I would recommend going more like 12 because you should repeat some of the information and really teach the skills a little bit more. And the 3 modules are called the cognitive skills module, the social skills module, and the problem-solving skills module. These are 3 evidence-based practices, and I'm going to talk about this intervention here called the 3 C's, catch it, check it, change it, which teaches people to check out their thoughts. And we'll talk about why that's important and doing experiments to test out thoughts that might be mistakes in thinking. And social skills training's been around forever. So is CBT since the 50s, including for people with schizophrenia. But social skills training is basically doing role plays with people to teach them how to communicate better, to be more assertive, to manage getting their needs met, ask people to do things, ask people to stop doing things that bother you, making requests and things like that. And so just learning how to use your communication skills to achieve your goals. And then problem solving training is really brainstorming possible solutions and teaching people the steps they would need to do to solve various problems that are targeting recovery goals. So we use an acronym called SCALE, which is specify the problem, compile all possible alternatives, which is brainstorming, assess the best one, lay out a plan on how to achieve it, and then execute and evaluate whether the plan works. This has been around a long time. They use it a lot for depression. 5 steps of solving problems to get people active and working toward their recovery goals. So what do I mean by recovery goals? CBSST targets functioning, really. It targets what people want to do in their life. So living, learning, working, and socializing goals, things that you're trying to work on ACT teams. How to get people a better living situation, live independently, maintain their living situation. Do they want to take a class or work toward a degree or certificate or learn a new skill? That's living, learning, working, get a job, do a volunteer job, and socializing, make a friend, get a partner to share your life with. So living, learning, working, and socializing. This is really the cornerstone of CBSST, and in my view, any intervention, including medications or any treatment, you need to know what someone wants. So you need to know what are their living, learning, working, and socializing goals. What do they want to put into their life? And that's what motivates people to do anything. If you want someone to take a medication, or for that matter, to take a shower, you need to know what they want out of life and then link what you want them to do to that goal. So if someone wants a girlfriend, you can link taking a shower to making someone more likely to get a girlfriend, and that will motivate someone to do a step toward their goal of having a relationship. Same with anything else. We figure out what people want, set that long-term recovery goal, break that goal into steps people can do every day, and then use these skills to work toward checking those boxes and achieving those steps along the way. I can't stress enough how important putting these recovery goals into someone's life is to motivate people to do it, to learn these skills. It's not easy, and people have to have a reason to do it. We don't set what's called elimination goals. We don't set goals to reduce symptoms, to reduce substance use, to quit smoking, to lose weight, to stop my depression, to not be paranoid, to get rid of the voices. These are all definitely treatment goals, but they're not recovery goals, and they're not that motivating. Eliminating things from your life isn't as motivating as putting something you really want into your life. And so we really focus on those functioning goals. You might have to manage voices or reduce your substance or eliminate your substance use in order to achieve that goal. But once you know what someone wants, you can help them do those other things to eliminate things that are in the way, as well as learn to bolster their strengths and learn new skills to put the thing that's really wanted into their life. It's really an important part. It's not easy, but it's a key part of this, is that kind of recovery goal setting. And all these skills are very strongly linked to achieving that long-term recovery goal. So why do CBSST? Like, why did we bundle CBT and SST into this intervention? For a while, I was working on that dual diagnosis program, and I grew up at UCLA, where they do a lot of social skills training. We did tons of role plays, and I would teach people how to do stuff in those groups, like how to ask a girl out on a date if you wanted to have a partner. And so I quickly learned that just because someone can ask me out on a date in a fake role play in a group, it doesn't mean when they're faced with a real live person they might have to ask out that they don't actually use the skill. And so you have to ask yourself, why would someone be really good at saying, hey, would you like to go to coffee with me? It'd make me very happy. That's making a positive request. You role play it a dozen times, people can do it no problem, but when faced with a real person, they don't ask them. And that's often because a thought is in the way. So you could teach people the skills to do things, but often they won't use them because of what they're thinking. And this is what cognitive therapy or CBT addresses. For example, you might think, she'll laugh, she'll say no, I'll be embarrassed, I'm not lovable because I have schizophrenia. There's a lot of kinds of thoughts that would stop you from actually trying to use your skills to get what you really want. And so I realized that we had to bundle these two interventions together and address these thoughts that are in the way of the skills that we're teaching people. So that's the rationale for the intervention, is to challenge these defeatist beliefs, they're self-defeating, that are in the way of people improving their life. So the model is that if you have a serious mental illness, you've had a lot of failure experiences, likely. You might not have gotten good grades in school. You might not have had a lot of friends. Your illness causes a lot of things like this, cognitive impairments like remembering, learning, and of course, stigma that you're getting from society, and self-stigma about what it means to have a serious mental illness can lead to multiple failure experiences. Well, if you start to fail a lot, you might start to expect to fail. I'll just fail again is a thought. I'm damaged by illness is a thought. These are defeatist thoughts. If you have thoughts like this, you're not going to work as hard. When you think about going to the job interview, you might think, they're not going to hire me. I'm not going to take that class because I won't get a good grade. I remember getting bad grades. And people, when you're trying to make a new friend, people might not want to be my friend. These are defeatist beliefs. And we've done a bunch of research on these defeatist beliefs, and they're linked to things like motivation. So if you measure people's motivation to do things, or their expectations for things to work out are in the way of being motivated to try them. It's not a very complicated model, and it's how everybody works. It's not really linked to serious mental illness in any sense. No one's going to try something if they think it's not going to work out well. And so in CBSST, we have skills that we teach people on how to challenge these defeatist beliefs so they can actually work on these functioning goals more. So we've done a bunch of clinical trials on this. We first compared CBSST to treatment as usual, which is standard care, what people are getting, usually medications and case management. And then we've compared it to this goal setting group where we set recovery goals and then just talked in the group about supporting each other to achieve them, as opposed to setting those recovery goals and then practicing these skills to achieve them. We've done a bunch of trials with different sample sizes, and people's functioning in the community improved more in CBSST than any of these control conditions in all of the clinical trials. And their motivation also improved. So these beliefs, these defeatist beliefs, mediated those improvements through motivation. So if you get people to believe they might succeed more, they try harder. And if people try harder, they succeed more to improve their functioning. And these are pretty big effect sizes. If you know what a D is, it's an effect, it's a measure of how strong the intervention works. And they were greater for CBT than if you just do CBT or SST alone and you don't bundle them, you get about half as strong an effect as when you put them together. So it really does matter. You have to teach people skills to improve their social functioning, and then you have to get the beliefs out of the way that stop them from using the skills. So I'm not going to talk anymore about the evidence base. You're just going to have to trust me. There's been a whole bunch of studies on CBT and SST. These things work, and they just don't get delivered. So we we're trying to find ways to make it easier to deliver these in the context of busy caseloads and things like driving around in the community or meeting people at their home or on a park bench or on the way to an appointment, doing these things in the car. You can do CBSST. We've done it in groups with 2 therapists for an hour in a clinic, like standard, like psychotherapy kind of things. But we've done this one clinical trial, and I've done some other things where people just pull these tools out of their tool belt while they're driving someone to an appointment in a car or in a 15-minute visit at someone's boarding care. There are ways to ask people about their thoughts and help them question whether their expectations about the job interview or expectations about whatever they're working on are in the way of them achieving that. And so it can be done what I call on the fly. You can set up CBSST groups in the clinic, go pick people up, bring them in, or have them take the bus or whatever. And that's great too. Sometimes people do it an hour a week, 90 minutes a week. Sometimes people do 2 one-hour groups a week. There's lots of formats where you can deliver the intervention. You can do it in individual or groups, whatever your clinic is more set up to do, or out in the community. I actually think out in the community works great because it's real world. So you could say, what's going through your mind when that person said that to you, when you have if they have an interaction with someone in the community. When you were on the bus, what was going through your mind? These are the kinds of things you do to ask people about their thoughts. So I'm done telling you it works and giving you the rationale and theoretical stuff and like why you should do it. Now I'm going to drill down and be pretty concrete about how to do it. And the thing that's in this intervention that makes it a lot easier to do it is the 3 C's. The 3 C's is just a memory aid to help you remember what to do. It means catch it, check it, change it, and I'll tell you all about it in a minute. As I've been saying, the key is to get at the thoughts and the relationships between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So I know many of you have done CBT before. This is the CBT, or it's called the generic cognitive model, or the CBT Triangle. The idea is this is how people work. This isn't how mental illness works. This is how we work. So thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are related. If you think I'll never succeed, you're going to be sad and you're not going to try. So this is the generic cognitive model where there's an event or a situation where you're sitting home at the boarding care, you're watching TV, and you think nothing will ever change. Well, if you think a thought like that, you're going to feel sad and pessimistic, and you're going to stay home and do nothing. What you think is going to drive your feelings and your behavior. So if you change this thought to, well, maybe it'll work out this time, you're going to feel less sad and less pessimistic, and you're more likely to get up and be motivated to go do something. So people who think they'll succeed and think they'll enjoy doing things are more likely to try them because they think they'll succeed and they think they'll be fun. People with schizophrenia have what's called anticipatory hedonia, where they don't anticipate things to be fun. Even though while they're doing them, they report them being as fun as anyone else. They kind of forget that, and they don't expect things are going to be fun. So why try? And they don't expect to succeed, especially at harder things. So you have to kind of just talk them out of these thoughts. And that's called belief modification. So you identify thoughts and relationships with feelings and behaviors, and you use a tool called a thought record. You just write down the thought and the feelings and behaviors that go with them, and I'll show you one in a minute. And then you have them just catch mistakes, examine the evidence for and against them. So that's what we use the 3 C's for, just checking out thoughts. And you can do behavioral experiments, or you do little experiments to test out the thoughts and see if they're accurate or not. This is all CBT is. This is cognitive therapy right there. So at least the skills-based version. It's not a formulation-driven version. If you know what that is, this is just an easy skills-based way to check out thoughts that are in the way of recovery goals. So catch it. It is a thought. So you catch, check, and change thoughts that are in the way of goals. So you try to catch unhelpful thoughts, ones that are making you feel bad or not work on your goal. And one thing you could teach people to do is ask them if the thought is helping them reach their goal, or ask them if maybe they have a thought that's making them feel angry or sad or guilty or scared. These are unpleasant feelings and they're driven by thoughts. And so those feelings are a red flag to check out the thoughts. And then you teach people to check it. What's the evidence for or against the thought? So you literally take a pad out and you write for and against and draw a line, and then you start writing on it. Well, what supports this thought? And what might not support this thought? And you look for whether it's a mistake in thinking. And I'll talk about those in a second. And then if it is a mistake, well, change it to something that might be more helpful. So let's drill down into this a little bit more. When you do this cognitive skills module with people, there's a manual, there's a workbook, there's handouts, there's homework assignments. I'll tell you where you can get that in a minute. You could go to CBSST.org and find information on where to get that too. So each of these is a session. So the first thing you do is you meet. First session is make sure you have a recovery goal. Look for a living, learning, working, and socializing goal. Really work on whether they really want it. Break it down into steps that you could do every day to work toward it. And then you go through the 3 C's. And first thing you do is introduce the idea that thoughts matter. You draw that triangle on the paper I showed you. You teach people how thoughts can affect feelings and behaviors. And then once you've introduced the idea that thoughts matter, you teach a session for each of these. Like, how do you catch your thoughts? When do you know when to think about what you're thinking? How do you think about what you're thinking? These are not easy things. Even what's the difference between a thought and a feeling is like a lot of a session. People will often say things like, I felt like he didn't like me. Well, that's not a feeling, that's a thought. You thought he didn't like you and you felt rejected. So you have to talk about the difference between thoughts and feelings and how thoughts are what are driving the feeling. And then you check it out. You teach what mistakes in thinking are. This is a whole other session to check it. You look for evidence. You talk about how to look for evidence, like a lawyer or a detective trying to look for the facts. And then you change it. What's another possibility? Now that you think maybe there's not a lot of evidence, it's right. What would be a more helpful thought? Oh, maybe the person will say yes if I ask them out. Maybe the person would hire me, or maybe I might get a good grade in the class, or whatever people are working on. And then there's another session or two where you practice putting it all together, the 3 C's. And those are the 6 sessions of the module. So catch it, stop and think. You really have to help people remember to take a step back and think. If you're feeling an unpleasant feeling or something's going on, you need to think about what you're thinking. It's the hardest step, actually. So the red flag technique helps a lot. Literally in sessions, I'll actually have a red flag, a little one, but I've had a therapist who had like a broomstick and a big pillowcase that was red on it, and she would wave it in the group and say, that's a red flag feeling, and it makes it very memorable. They say, oh, whenever I feel angry now, I always think of you waving that flag, and I think about what's going through my head. So unwanted feelings are a signal. Emotion is the royal road to cognition, is what Beck says. So if you're feeling angry, sad, scared, these are red flag feelings. These are unpleasant feelings that remind you, I should wonder what I'm thinking right now. What am I thinking about what's going on that's making me angry? What am I thinking that's making me scared to go on the bus? What's the worst that could happen? So you have to teach people how to slow down and think about their thinking. It's the hardest step, probably. We play some games to do this when we do it in groups, or you could do it in individual sessions. One is called the ball toss game, where we have a ball, and on it with a Sharpie, we wrote a bunch of feelings on it. So you catch the ball, and whatever your right hand is on, if it says angry, you say, well, what thought might make someone angry? Oh, someone's disrespecting me, or that person's not being fair. And people can try to come up with the thought, or sometimes there's a thought on the ball and you catch it, it's a different ball. You catch the ball and it says what kind of, there might be a thought on there like, oh, he did that on purpose. That, what might that make you feel? And it's angry. And so they have to come up with a feeling that might go with a thought on the ball. So it just teaches people how to connect thoughts and feelings using a game that's fun and memorable to teach the skill. And there's other things you can do to get at the thought, like guided imagery, which just means imagine you're back there right now. You walk on the bus. Where are people sitting? Is anyone looking at you? What's going through your mind right now? What does it smell like? What does it look like? Who do you see? And then to try to get them to slow down and think about what thought was going on there through their head that made them feel like I'm going to be hurt, I'm in danger. What led to that scared feeling? And then you got off the bus and you didn't go where you need to go. So you put them in the situation in an imaginary way, and you say, what's going through your mind right now while you're there? It's not easy teaching people to identify these thoughts because they're often outside of their awareness, and people will say, I wasn't thinking anything, I was just mad. Or I wasn't thinking anything, I was just scared, so I got off the bus. And you have to slow down. And if initially people have trouble with it, but after practicing, people get better and better at wondering what they're thinking and figuring out, if not in the moment, closer and closer to the moment. And then you could have checklists, which just are different kinds of thoughts they might be thinking in different situations, and it might help people figure out what they're thinking. But the key is getting at these thoughts. Once you identify the thought, you can say, that seems plausible. What's the evidence for that? And then you say, well, is there any evidence against it? What have you thought about that that could contradict that that's true? Maybe it's not true. Maybe they weren't. What made you think the person was going to hurt you on the bus? Well, he was staring at you. He was staring at me. And so you say, well, why does staring at you make you think someone's going to hurt you? Is the only reason? How does staring mean you're in danger? Oh, he was thinking I'm going to get that guy. And then you ask them, well, how do you know what they were thinking? This is called Socratic questioning, where you just say, well, what made you scared? Why did you think that? Why does this make you think that? You're just asking people to drill down to their thought chain and see if they can identify a mistake somewhere in there. You normalize mistakes. You say, we always make mistakes. Oh, I thought that once, and I was jumping to a conclusion. It turned out to not be true. And you just have a conversation. It all starts with sort of saying, I can see why you would think that. Let's talk more. What made you think that? And so you really have to drill down and understand the evidence before you start shifting to what else might be going on, and talk about alternative thoughts, and some evidence they might not have thought of, like you're a detective investigating something. And sometimes people won't agree on whether it's accurate or inaccurate, but usually people will agree that it's unhelpful. Is that thought helping you get your goal to, move out of into your own place, or is that in the way of you getting your goal? And because if it's in the way, we better really make sure it's right before we give up. And then we teach about mistakes in thinking. There's dozens of these in a CBT book that you can look at. We focus on these 5. They seem most often relevant and easy to teach. The first one is just black and white thinking, or all and none thinking. See things as all good or all bad. And that one's easy to spot because it's like, no one would ever go out with me, or I'll never get a job. They always want to do that to you. So anytime you hear always, never, every, that's all or none thinking, because there's always an exception to a rule. It's never 100%. And so these are easy to spot and easy to write on the board or write on a pad. You should be writing down thoughts a lot when you do this therapy, and say, let's look at that thought. And you literally need to look at the thought and talk about it in a concrete way, and ask them, I wonder if that's one of those common mistakes in thinking that we all make. And there's mind reading. He bumped into me on purpose. He meant to do that. So assume, they're not calling because they're mad at me. this is mind reading. You don't know what people are thinking. You don't know why these things are happening. And I wonder, and maybe that's just another common mistake in thinking that you're making. Fortune telling. Why ask Grouch? He's going to say no. Why go to the job interview? They aren't going to hire me. This is predicting the future. And it's usually thinking things will turn out badly, or even catastrophizing, which is thinking the absolute worst thing is going to happen. And jumping to conclusions is a very common thing. Just because of a little bit of evidence, people make a conclusion that something's going on. The classic one is you walk in a room and everyone stops talking. They must have been talking about you. That's jumping to a conclusion based on one little shred of evidence. Again, it's often the most catastrophic conclusion that people jump to with very little data. So you teach them to just collect some more data and see if they still think that's what's happening. Emotional reasoning is just deciding that things are true based on your feelings. So the most common one here is, I got on the bus, I was scared, so there must have been danger and I got off. So that's like using your feeling to reason backwards that there must be danger. But people are putting the cart before the horse. They're thinking there's danger and that's why they feel scared. And using your emotions as data is not a good way to check out what you're thinking. I'm not talking a lot about this right now, but all these mistakes in thinking can be applied to other things like beliefs about voices, delusional beliefs. You can talk about what's the evidence for that? What's the evidence against that? I wonder if that little piece is a mistake in thinking or not. Not questioning the core delusion, but questioning the evidence around the delusion that people are using to support it. So not saying that it might not be happening, but saying maybe it's not happening now is a way to think about that. That's called CBT for psychosis. And that's a whole different thing, but sometimes you do have to work on beliefs about voices. If there's time, I'll talk about that a little bit later, or paranoid or other beliefs that might be in the way of people's recovery goals. But in CBSST, we don't go after those beliefs unless they're in the way of the goal. Just because people are having voices or delusions, that's usually not the reason why they're not working on their functioning goals. In fact, positive symptoms are one of the weaker predictors of success at things like work or school or relationships, social functioning. Negative symptoms and defeatist beliefs, like I was talking about before, and cognitive impairments are much better predictors of how people are doing in their life, much better than beliefs like paranoia or hallucinations, positive symptoms. So that's why we go after defeatist attitudes and motivation more than positive symptoms. But sometimes people don't get on the bus because of a delusion, and sometimes voices tell them to do things and you need to address it. And you can use these same cognitive skills, mistakes in thinking, jumping to conclusions, and do experiments and use the 3 C's to address that when it does come up, if it is interfering with that living, learning, working, and socializing goal. But if it's not interfering with that, I don't address it. So you can also do experiments to test these things out. So how do you do an experiment? Well, you make it up together. This is hard, but you can collaborate together to test out beliefs. Like if someone thinks nobody wants to talk to them, you can do an experiment to test it out. Like basically assign them to go to the clubhouse and say hi to someone, and if they say hi back, maybe they do want to talk to you. And so you specify the experiment, you say what data they're going to collect, and you say, well, that would contradict your conclusion. And you could do these kinds of experiments. Here's one sort of a little bit about paranoia. So someone is taking my mail, you send yourself a letter. So I did this with someone in a session. He said someone was stealing his mail at the board and care. This was actually a really relevant thing for this person because he thought people were taking a lot of his stuff, and his solution for that belief was to punch them. And so he was going to go to a locked facility for a year, and he definitely was motivated to stay more independent than that. So we spent a lot of time testing out beliefs about whether people were actually taking his things, which does happen a lot. So you have to be careful and just don't always assume that the person's wrong. You have to test the things out. So we would do experiments to test these things out. So we said, how about if we send you a letter to the board and care? So we sat in a session, addressed the letter, put a stamp on it, put it in the mailbox. And we said, if it comes to your place, then no one's stealing your mail. And the letter arrived, came back to the next session. So yeah, maybe all my mail isn't getting stolen. He then loopholed me and said, well, it's only checks and they know which ones are my social security checks and things like that. And so we actually went and got some social security checks come to social work service here. So I went and got an envelope there, and we addressed it with like a typed label and made it look official, and we sent it, and that came too. And I said, even one that looks like a check is coming. So what that helped do is just reduce his conviction from maybe a 10 to a 9 or a 10 to an 8 or a 9 to a 7. It just knocked it down a little that, okay, maybe all my mail isn't being stolen, which was way better because he wasn't absolutely positive and then singled out the person that was going to do it and then would get very aggressive toward that person. So you're not trying to get rid of the delusions or get rid of the paranoia. You're just trying to knock it down and introduce some doubt into how firmly held these beliefs are. And these little experiments, do quite a lot to do that. So if someone goes from a 10 to a 9, I'm happy. Didn't get rid of a delusion, didn't get rid of it, but if someone's not going to do something that's going to be harmful to their goals and, put them in a locked facility, then it worked. So once you've whittled away at the conviction in the belief, you can often get people to just change it to something else. Maybe all my mail's not being stolen. And then sometimes, you come down and actually beliefs are correct. In this case, someone did steal your phone, and so how do you cope? Sometimes I think the 4th C should be cope. And then you switch to problem solving and you think, well, what are you going to do about things getting stolen at your board and care? What can we do with that? That's coping with an accurate belief that things are being stolen. So you don't always come down on the side that thoughts are wrong. That's not true. A lot of thoughts are right. And if it's correct, you should cope with it. What are you going to do about this? But those are the 3 C's. So to make it a little more concrete with some examples here, you have people fill out these 3 C's worksheets. This is their homework. By the way, in CBSST and in a lot of evidence-based practices, you really want people to practice what they're doing with you in session in between sessions. And the reason is that these are skills, they're behaviors that people need to practice in order to get them down. It's like riding a bike. You can't look at a bike and talk about riding a bike and see a PowerPoint presentation on riding a bike and say, well, that's how you ride a bike. Have a good bike ride. You have to practice riding the bike. It's a behavior, it's a skill. Same with a musical instrument. You can't just go to your music lessons once a week for 30 minutes and have someone teach you how to play the piano for 30 minutes and not practice in between. And you probably can learn how to play the piano that way. It'll just take you many, many years. Whereas if you practice in between the sessions, you're going to learn how to play the piano a lot faster. And I use those 2 kind of metaphors to convince people to do their homework. And I give them homework. Sometimes I call it at-home practice. If they don't like the word homework, so you have to practice these things at home. If you want the job or the place or the more money or the relationship, it just depends on how bad you want it. If you want it, you'll get it a lot faster if you practice these things when you're not with me. And in the real world, you can't just practice them in a fake setting, doing role plays and things. You have to go out with real people in real world and use these things in order for them to get better. So that's my pitch. If you do anything you do, honestly, you have to teach people to do it at home. They have to generalize to the real world. And so you have to assign homework. If you don't assign homework every single time you meet with someone, then the message is homework's not that important. It's optional. Sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't. You should assign homework every time. You should use those metaphors as to why. And then you really see people using the skills and changing their life in the real world. They can't just do CBSST when they're with you. They have to do it in the real world. I can't stress the importance of homework enough. in our studies, we get 80% of people doing 80% of the homework assignments. And these are very impaired people. Our studies have no exclusion criteria. These are people with methamphetamine habits. As long as they could be outpatients, they're in the groups. And there's no exclusion criteria for anything. They have to have a serious mental illness, a psychotic disorder, and be able to be in an outpatient group. That's it. And they do the homework. Not everyone does. Some people never do homework. But the only way to find out who's going to do the homework is to try to get them to every week and see if they'll do it. You have to do a behavioral experiment yourself. So don't expect people will never do homework. That's the therapist's belief that needs to be challenged. Okay, I'm off my soapbox on homework, but you need to assign homework. So here's a sample of how you can use the 3 C's with people. They actually fill these kinds of worksheets out at home. So what's the situation? I'm sitting at home thinking about money. This person's goal is employment. Well, what are the possible red flag feelings and behaviors? I'm frustrated, depressed, pessimistic, and I'm not doing anything. I didn't bother filling out the applications. Well, these are not desired feelings or behaviors. So what's going through your mind right now? They'll never hire me. I'm not good enough. It's too hard. Let's catch that thought, and they write it on the worksheet. And then check it. Is that all or none thinking? Are those any of the common mistakes in thinking that we talked about? How do I know they won't hire me? I used to do that job. Maybe I can do it. And then you change it into a more helpful thought. Catch it, check it, change it if it's an undesired feeling or behavior. Same as here. See a pretty girl. I want to talk to her. My goal is to have a relationship. I'm lonely. And what feelings? Scared, nervous, anxious. I stayed quiet and didn't do anything. Red flag feelings and behaviors. What's going through your mind right now? She'll reject me because I have a mental illness. I'm flawed. I'll have nothing to say. Are you jumping to conclusions? Are you fortune telling? Are these common mistakes in thinking? What mistake might they be? How do I know she'll reject me? She doesn't know I have a mental illness. I've had girlfriends before. Maybe I could just introduce myself and say hi. We can talk about something I know about. So you try to just have them question what's going through their mind. In all this, all you need to really do is get people curious about their thoughts. If you go through, teach all this, they never remember any of this, but they start wondering about their thoughts and realize, my thoughts might be making me have these feelings and not getting to my goals. Maybe I should check them out. You're just trying to get people curious about what they're thinking. That's all you have to do. Here's one with sort of more like psychotic thoughts and feelings. So walked in a room, everyone stopped talking. They're talking about me. That's mind reading, jumping to conclusions. Just because they're looking at me doesn't mean they're talking about me. Last time it wasn't true. They're probably talking about something else. Even if they are, who cares? You could change it to any thought that's more helpful and less leading to these unwanted states. And then home alone, you hear an abusive, critical voice. You're ugly, kill yourself. You feel afraid and helpless. You shout to be left alone. These are red flags to tell you what's going through my mind. Well, this is Satan's voice. That's a thought someone is having about the voice. So what's the thought that you're having about this situation? Well, if I don't do it, terrible things will happen. I'm going to go to hell. If you think these things, you're going to be afraid and helpless. It's not the fact that you're hearing an abusive voice. It's the fact that you're thinking these things about the voice that you're hearing that's making you afraid and shouting. And so you need to question the belief in order to reduce these negative outcomes. Maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. How do I know it's Satan? Predicting the future. How do I know I'm going to be sent to hell by Satan? Didn't obey, I didn't obey before and nothing bad happened. Satan's supposed to be all powerful, so maybe it's not Satan. This is called thought chaining. So people think the voice has power and control over them. So you look at the evidence for whether they have power, the voice has any power and control. Well, you say this is an all-powerful being. You didn't obey before and nothing happened. So why do you think if you don't obey now, something's going to happen? This is Socratic questioning. This is just looking for evidence to challenge the unhelpful beliefs. In this case, the beliefs are about voices. In the other cases, it's about like getting a date or something. It's the same model though. Maybe voices can't hear me. Maybe my voices are from illness, not Satan. Those alternative thoughts are way less impactful than these thoughts. So if you could switch to these thoughts, then these things go, negative outcomes go away. So what I'm talking about here, I'll get to that in a second, but just to close on the 3 C's, the 3 C's has gone kind of viral. It's in a lot of VAs and beyond. People in Canada are using it. This stuff has been translated into Japanese and Spanish, Polish, all kinds of languages. And the 3 C's really, people really resonate with this. They sent me things like this drawing the patient drew of catching it, checking it out, and changing it. I love that one. And then, you know, catch it, check it, change it. So people send me these drawings. One of VA had like an art contest where they had to draw the 3 C's. People have sent me like songs. This is one to Whip It, which I should not sing, it'll be horrible, but you know, the Devo song. When you stop working on your goals, you must catch it. When you're feeling really bad, you must check it, or yeah, okay, catch it or whatever. So you get the idea. Now check it, look for facts, check for clues. So someone actually sent me themselves singing this, which was pretty cool. But people love the 3 C's. It's super easy to remember. That's why we made it up. It's a mnemonic aid to teach people, just get curious about your thoughts. If you have any talent, you can play the guitar and sing this in the group, and people will remember what the 3 C's are if you do that. So I only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to give you a little more on how to do this for CBT for psychosis. And it's kind of easiest to apply to voices. So if someone's having hallucinations that are keeping them from having a friend or keeping them from changing their life in a way that's meaningful to them, and the voices are what's in the way, you can use the 3 C's to address them too. So in this situation, say someone's sitting there and hearing a voice, kill yourself. So the thought, as I put in the thought record, it's if you think that's the voice of Satan, that's a very distressing thought. Satan's an all-powerful being and an evil being. So if you think the person talking to you is Satan, that's a very distressing situation to be in. By the way, you know, people have to come up with these fantastic beliefs about their voices because it's a supernatural. They have to have a supernatural belief because it's a supernatural experience. If you're alone and there's no one there and you hear something, people do hear voices, and they sound like they're coming in their ears. If you ask people, is it a male or a female? Is it loud or quiet? Is it a deep or a high pitched voice? People will tell you what the voice sounds like. And if you have that experience, you're going to have to come up with a supernatural explanation. It's going to have to be a magical being, a god, a demon. In veterans, it's often like an implant or a satellite thing or some shot someone got while they were in the military. So depending on who you are, you're going to come up with a logical conclusion because you're forced to come up with a supernatural conclusion, which is something, there's no one here and I'm hearing something. It must be a supernatural, that's a supernatural experience. So you have to come up with a supernatural explanation. So what I'm trying to say is people who have psychotic symptoms aren't irrational. They're completely rational. They can do CBT. They can check out accuracy of beliefs because they made a rational conclusion that Satan's torturing them because they had a supernatural experience to hear something when no one's around. And so they had to conclude that it's something supernatural. And what you have to do is say, I could see why you would think that. Oh, it's a booming voice. Oh, you have a religious, you had a very religious childhood. You know, Satan is something that's been scary to you. You had this scary experience. You made this conclusion. What other things did you consider? What other thoughts have you had about where that voice could have come from? When you first heard it, what made you decide it was Satan? Those kinds of questions betray that it's a conclusion based on data, and it starts a conversation about what's the evidence that that's where the voice came from. So if you have that thought, you're going to stay home and withdraw and be afraid and helpless. So if you could change the belief that it's Satan or that the voice could hurt you or has any power, you can change these behaviors and those feelings. It's not the voice that causes someone to stay home and be afraid. It's what the person thinks about the voice. So the key beliefs to go after with voices are what we call an external agent and the power, especially power. So external agent just means that you think the voice is from outside of you, not inside of you. The voice is inside the person. It's caused by illness. Really what the voice is a change in their brain that makes them hear their own thoughts aloud. So your voice has to be coming from somewhere. And if it's not coming from outside of you, it has to be coming from your own thoughts. There's nowhere else for it to come from. And so what you do is you just have them test out beliefs about being from an external agent. Well, how do you do that? You ask where that came, how they concluded that in the first place, etc. And you can do experiments to test it out. Well, have you ever tried to record it? No? Well, let's try to record it. Whenever you hear the voice, run this recorder, use your phone or whatever. And then why doesn't it show up on the recording? If it's outside of you and it's coming in from outside, why can't you record it? So that's a way of collecting data to decide whether it's an external agent or not. That's an example. You can have people play music, put earplugs in and things like that. So the other one is power. Okay, well, maybe it is Satan, maybe it's not. Let's agree to disagree. How do you know it can hurt you? Has it ever hurt you before? What has it done? What have you ever disobeyed? What happened? And so you can go after the power of the voice. I had a patient who heard his dead dad. His dead dad was a horrible man, very abusive growing up. He actually shot himself in front of the family playing Russian roulette, like a really horrible childhood. The guy the voice the guy heard is his dead dad. And we worked a lot on his dead dad sort of haunting him after he died and was talking to him, and it sounded like his dad. And there were lots of reasons the guy thought it was his dead dad. And in his culture, dead people do come back and talk to you. And so we didn't move that much on external agency, no matter how much we looked at evidence or tested it out. But I started to talk about the power. Okay, well, I don't know whether it's your dad or not, but if it is your dad, how do you know he can still hurt you from beyond? I know he hurt you a lot when he was here, so how can he hurt you from beyond? And he talked to elders in his church about whether the dead can influence the living or change things here as opposed to just communicate. They said no, they can sometimes talk. So the dead don't affect the living. And then, have you ever tested it out? Yeah, I haven't always done what he said, et cetera, et cetera. And so we started to work on the power of the voice. And I was like, well, was your dad an honest man? Oh, no, he was a liar. So if he was lying when he was alive, why isn't he lying when he's dead? Maybe your dad's just lying to you now and he can't hurt you, or he was worried he was going to hurt his mom. And you don't need to listen to your dad because he's just a liar. And that got a lot of traction. And he stopped listening to the dad, and he was having a lot of trouble with violence, that the dad would tell him to do things. And anyway, we got traction on testing out beliefs about power. So maybe that'll give you some kind of feel about how you talk to people about this. You try one thing, and if that's not going anywhere, you can agree to disagree and say, I'm not sure about that one, but what about this? You go after external agency or power. And you just test out beliefs and have conversations about whether there's really any evidence that the voice has any power or control against you at all. This is very important when voices are command hallucinations that tell people to hurt themselves or others. Because if they're going to comply because they think the voice can do the threats they say, you can get rid of the violence because you take away the power. And there's lots of evidence. Max Birchwood has an intervention that just goes after power of voices and in a CBT for psychosis way, and reduces suicidality and homicidality just by going after command hallucinations that way. But power is a very good thing to go after, not just for violence, but for, the voice can't do anything it's saying, so why are you listening to it? So that's just a quick splash of CBT for psychosis, but you would go after these voices if they're in the way of that recovery goal. And that gives you a feel for how you would use the 3 C's and the whole approach of just looking at beliefs about things to tackle it. So I just said this part without saying it on the slide. So if you want to learn more about cognitive behavioral social skills training, there's this book. This is a very easy book to use. There's a chapter on how to do each session. So if you wanted to just read one chapter on session 1 and then go in and do session 1, you could do that. You don't have to read the whole book. It's like a 5-page chapter, and then you could do each session one at a time. It's supposed to be super practical. There's scripts, there's an agenda for every session. There's a patient workbook in there. There's a PDF version you can download if you get the book. And you can get this at Guilford Press. And it's designed to be like super easy to use. And I didn't talk about the SST module or the problem solving module, but they're obviously in there too with the cognitive skills module. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. I have some time for questions. I was hoping to stop at 1. I think I'm pretty close to that.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Eric. Well, we've got a couple of questions that came in the Q&A. So one of them I know you were looking directly at and testing out in your clinical trial with your RCT in San Diego. Any thoughts about multiple team members working on the same lesson with CBSST? Kind of how do you work that out in a team-based model?
In a team-based model? Okay, so yeah, $64,000 question.
Yeah.
So you all have to figure out the best way to do that yourselves. There's a few ways. I mean, ACT is a team-based model. The same person might not see the same client every week, although often some people have their clients they see every week. If you see the person every week, then that's easy. That the same therapist does CBSST with the person each week. And you can remember what you did last week, and you know what you assigned for homework, and you know what the person's goals are, and you're all on the same page. But if someone different goes out the next week, the issue is how do you share the information? What homework was assigned? What session number are you on? How far did you get? And so there's a few ways you can do that. Some people have just put it on the whiteboard. There's a CBSST board, and you write there what session you're on, you erase it, what homework was assigned. Someone could look at the board, or we use, there's a patient workbook. And so the therapists would keep a workbook in a folder for each person. The patient had their own workbook, but there was a team workbook. So you would be writing in the workbook, here's what you did, here's what session you're on. So that's easy because then the provider just grabs the workbook and goes out and does the session, writes what they did and puts it back in the folder. And just, just jots down a few notes and does it and shares the information that way. And, there's morning meetings where people would share what's going on in the regular morning meeting. And of course, the progress note, depending on how much time you have to put relevant information into that. But then the person would have to read the progress note before going out. No doubt, adding an evidence-based practice like this, it adds burden to busy providers. I always think it's easier to give a person a fish than to teach them how to fish. But if you give them a fish, they can't fish for their whole lifetime. So you could help someone solve their cable bill, or you can role play with them how to call up and solve their own cable bill. And then they learn how to solve the cable bill and they can do it themselves the next time, is how I think of it. But it's a lot faster and a lot easier to just call the cable company and fix it for them. And it takes more time to teach them, do the role plays and get the thoughts out of the way and let them do it themselves.
And I think we've been arguing more and more, it's the teaching to fish, that's really at the, the heart of helping people to, yes, you can, and in some cases it's going to make sense to give them the fish, but so these kinds of skills and strategies and making it easy to do it are so important, I think, within ACT, and figuring out, I think, who's doing what. So, really, who is the person who is doing CBSST, and where are the places in which other team members can help to reinforce or practice in other settings, that are relevant to the work that you're doing in CBSST, that kind of thing. So kind of, that transdisciplinary approach with different team members.
Yeah, there's different models, and if you've been to one team, you've been to one team, and everyone does it, finds what works best.
Different.
To have the champion for that intervention. That's the only couple people that do it, or does everybody do it? There's a lot of models.
Mm-hmm. There's another question about, okay, so I'm going to read it. Given the prevalence of serious trauma effects experienced by individuals served by ACT, and how trauma reactivation can elicit fight, flight, freeze responses, preventing cognitive processing, how do you prepare a person for trauma activating events which prevents them from initiating CBT thought processing?
So, yeah, the whole trauma is a whole other talk.
I know, and we've had Jennifer Granholm on talking about, or Granholm, I'm sorry, not Jennifer Granholm, Jennifer, she worked with you, Eric, and all of a sudden I'm blanking on her name.
Jennifer Gottlieb.
Yeah, Gottlieb.
Yeah.
Jennifer Granholm's a governor. I think you're a former governor. Yeah.
Yeah, triggering events are tough, and actually, when people are having hot cognitions or hot emotions, it's always harder to back up and slow down enough to look at your thoughts. And it's very common for people to say, I couldn't, it was just too much, and that's fine. And what I find works is you say, yeah, it's too hard right now in the moment. Let's do it now when we're looking back, and figure out what the thoughts are now looking back. And then people, the more you practice doing that and just get the idea across that there's a thought that came before the trigger. Well, there's the situation or whatever's happening is the trigger, but there's a thought that comes before that overwhelming emotion. The trick is identifying it, and that happens easier in hindsight than in the moment. And so I just teach people to get out, and calm, do emotion regulation things until they can start to find that thought. And so if what you find in retrospective keeps coming up to be a similar kind of thought, I put it on a laminated card and I say, this is probably what's happening when you're having those emotions. So pull this out and say, by then they've checked the thought out multiple times. So it's a little easier then to pull the card out and look at it and say, oh, maybe I'm having this thought, and that can be more calming. The thing about being triggered is that trigger it's not a permanent thing. Like, those aren't going to be triggers forever. The goal is to have them not be triggers anymore. And that the way to do that is to keep challenging the automatic thought that is between the trigger and the overwhelming feeling. So triggers don't have to be permanent. Situations that trigger they're not carved in stone. They can be changed. I don't know, but I'm not a trauma person. That's a better, that's what I do, because I have people with psychosis who also have PTSD. And so I'm not really working on the PTSD as much as I'm working on the psychosis. We're the VA. I mean, that's how we roll, PE and CBT for PTSD. But that's they send them over for me to help them with the psychosis, and while they do the trauma work over there. So I just try to get the trauma out of the way of me working on the voices or something.
Right. Yep. Other questions? Oh, we have Eric here. Or comments. You got lots of kudos in the chat. Hopefully you got to see those. People finding this really helpful, wanting to get their hands on the book or the slides. So thank you.
Thank you. I put my email into the chat too, if anybody wants. This was just like a little taste of an hour. I mean, you can't do.
I know.
Normally, I do like a 2-day, 8-hour-a-day workshop, and if people want me to do that, I'll come and do that. But we're doing them on Zoom now. But this is just a good taste
of it.
And the book really is like, if you get the book too, I'll make $1.69. Guilford will make like $30 off the book, but it's weird when someone else owns your book now, like they have the copyright. Like I don't even like own the intervention anymore. But anyway, that's been a little odd, but it is really helpful to have the Guilford putting the book out and publishing the PDFs, and it's really increased access to CBT and SST a lot. because if you just look, it really is like super. You just read the chapter to them, and you'll be doing high fidelity CBT. It doesn't take a lot of training to do it.
Yeah, I like to just, I mean, the formulation based, I appreciated your comment there too, that, these are the skills, and that's kind of real consistent with like more high yield, CBT interventions where you can just, kind of take them and use them kind of, wherever you are and whatever role you have to some extent in a way that you don't get bogged down. I think sometimes that's the thing that gets people bogged down with some of the kind of formulation based approaches to that. And then it creates inaccessibility to some of these interventions, right?
Exactly. If there's no scheme, there's no, if you know about schema, and if you can do all that and do the problem list and do like hardcore formulation driven look at historically where the core beliefs are and how they're driving the current beliefs. If you know about that stuff, go on, have at it.
Right.
You can do CBSST and that, but that shouldn't be a barrier from just pulling out the 3 C's and saying,
yeah,
let's catch, I wonder if that thought's accurate. Let's catch, check, and change that. I don't care why they think what they think about their hallucinations. I just care that it's in the way right now. And I'm going to catch, check, and change its accuracy. That's all you really, that helps a lot.
Yeah, that could go a long way.
You don't need to do formulation driven work. That's my opinion. I think a lot of the UK people would disagree with me a lot and have, but I think you could do a skills-based approach and improve people's functioning a lot.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know you've got a busy schedule, and we really appreciate you sharing with us today. So we'll be in touch for sure. I'm sure you'll be hearing from some people. Hopefully your training calendar is open.
That's true.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
Listening, everyone.
All right.
Try it out. You could do CBSST today. You know what the 3 C's are. If you see someone today, just teach them their thoughts matter. Hey, let's catch, check, and change that. You don't have to wait for a training.
That's right.
Try it today.
Right. Thank you. Super helpful.
I'm going to go. Bye.
Okay. Bye, Eric. So I think we'll shift gears.
Yeah, that was great. All right, guys, we're in open mic session now. So any of y'all have comments, thoughts, questions you want to pose to each other and us? This is a great time to do it. I saw a comment I think we were reacting to in the chat, but in case it wasn't open, I was going to say this with Eric here, but I love how he framed just the normalization of how people come to make sense of this very weird experience, because, of course, I'm going to go the route of thinking that it's God, Mother Nature, somebody implanted. That actually feels like a very rational explanation for such an irrational experience that somebody's having. So I know others kind of like grabbed onto his framing around that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what else do people have questions about today that you want to ask from other teams? Again, you can put it in the Q&A box. You can raise your hand. We'll call on you. Doesn't have to be related to anything we were just talking about, but just this opportunity to snag this time with other ACT teams or compare notes with folks on anything in particular. Time is yours. Won't be saturated with their own catch it, check it, change it.
I know, right? All right, you got a hand up. Go ahead. I don't think we have anyone muted, do we? People are welcome to come on right now if you want to show your faces, right?
No, because it's a webinar.
Forget that.
Yeah.
You can. Do they have control of their?
They should be able to. We just have to unmute them really quick.
Okay,
so
sorry.
Do that. That's okay. I got it. Okay, they're unmuted. So this is Leah or Lee.
Leah, yes.
Leah.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey guys, I just have a quick question. We've had a situation come up in Iowa City where assisted outpatient treatment is being explored as more of an option in our area. And I've been kind of fiddling around with looking at assisted outpatient treatment in terms of how it relates to ACT and how people are using it with ACT programs. And I'm just curious to know, if anyone has any ideas about or thoughts about assisted outpatient treatment and ACT and how they fit together, and if it's been working in your areas versus not working. That's my question. It's a little vague, but.
No, that's an excellent question. We actually just had something passed last week in Washington State related to assisted outpatient. So I have some thoughts on it, but I think we've got a lot of hands risen. So for the folks that I'm going to allow to talk here, this is again in response to Leah's questions, hopefully. So Michael, I'm going to go ahead and start with you.
Hi, everybody.
To that?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. So for a second, I was overseeing the sort of community, the ACT. I do the ACT fidelity reviews, but also I was during the pandemic, I was also overseeing the assisted outpatient treatment. And in Alameda County here, it is contracted for the AOT teams to utilize the ACT model. It's difficult because that one, admission criteria, they don't score well in because it's court ordered. But to answer your question, it is the goal, what we tried to do here with regards to implementing AOT is at first, the referral comes true. We use an outreach team first to go out to try to engage and develop rapport and to try to get the individual to enter into consenting treatment. That's the goal. However, if the individual is still reluctant to engage in treatment and they still meet the eligibility requirements for AOT, which here in California, I believe it's 2 hospitalizations in the past 3 years or jail, and danger to self or others or violent behavior will be, and on top of all that, reluctant to engage in services. But the individual, after usually the outreach team will try to engage for 3 months. And if the person is still reluctant, then we have the AOT investigator go out and investigate. And then we go through the serving process. What we did to kind of still, putting people voluntarily into treatment it's not the best approach. So what we implemented was we created, when we do the serving, we have the family involved, we have an outreach team member there, and we come out and we ask the person, we sit down with them and ask them what their goals are, what they want to do. We have this program. Usually when they say something like, I would like to find housing, the team can help you. This is a good opportunity. You take advantage of it. And we try to get the individual to then at least sign the settlement agreement. So even though they're ordered to court, but then they're kind of taking ownership of it. And so we have like a 70% settlement agreement assignment for it. We tell them that the team is going to be assigned to them. However, they do have an opportunity at this moment to sign the settlement agreement, take ownership, work for the goals you want. And we have a member of the team present so they can start engaging right away. And they provide the team approach. There's an employment specialist, there's a co-occurring disorder specialist on the team, there's peers, there's clinicians, there's nurses, and there's a prescriber. So we're really trying to, even though it is coerced and ordered to the court, we do as much as we possibly can to get the individual to connect to it. And what we found that's been working for us in Alameda County is due to the level of care eligibility requirements, a lot of folks that are kind of having a really difficult time out in the community, when they having a hard time out in the community, oftentimes especially if they came from out of county or if they don't have a lot of mental health history, then they're often referred to like a lower level of care, which is they don't do well in. They need more engagement. But if they have if they do have that danger to self others component, then we can get them connected to the AOT team, which will be able to meet them where they're at. Yeah. I hope that answers your questions. Yeah.
No, that's really helpful. I appreciate that perspective. I think the biggest concern I have, is the idea that the committal to the team, and whether people have had the experience of having individuals forced into taking, ACT treatment when probably may not have qualified for it in the first place, or are just not interested in it.
Yeah, that's true. Like they won't. That's the two components. Also, I do want to point out that the way we implement it here, AOT is through civilian court, not through criminal court. So there's not a lot of teams. So even though they're assigned to the ACT team, the AOT team, they're not forced to take medication or anything. And unless they sign a treatment plan, which at that point it's consenting, there's no treatment provided so that the AOT team would just provide continued outreach, their sort of engagement strategy, meeting the folks where they're at their home, meeting with the family, going out weekly, trying to build that rapport, taking Starbucks, taking whatever it is that they like. And when the person, at some point, the individual the other way it was really helpful if the person does get hospitalized and there's a team there in place for being involved in discharge or even admission, right? And a lot of times, what happens is that's where the team is able to kind of make the best headway is to meet them coming out of the hospital. So the person doesn't want to go back and they're like, okay, maybe I should start listening to you. And then that's when, they get connected to, they get their treatment plan developed and then they get connected to their team. And a lot of times the big connector, honestly, when I was going out, because I was doing the survey, the number one, in my opinion, the number one way we got folks to sign the settlement agreement and get involved was really talking about employment. Like, yeah, you can get a job if you want, if that's what you want. And a lot of times, and this one lady, she said something really beautiful. She was in the hospital and I told her that, yeah, you can find a job. She's like, really? And then I told her, because I used to be an employment specialist, I told her, yeah, the employers, they're not looking at your medical history. They're going to look at you as a person. And she was like, they're going to look at me as an individual and not a case number. And I go, yeah, the employer's not going to see any of that. They're going to see, can you do the job? And do you want to do the job? Do they like you? You like them? And she was so touched by that. So she signed the settlement agreement and she worked, the minute she got discharged from the hospital, she worked with the employment specialist. I believe she got her first interview a few weeks ago. So it's pretty exciting, and she was just, what she said was, I'm going to be viewed as a person and not as a case number. That was like, really touching. Yeah.
So I'm glad you shared all that, Michael. It's a difficult question. It's an area I've done research in as well. And, I was reading, Jack, your comment too. I think that all of us would much rather provide care on a voluntary status and a basis, and avoid that altogether. And I think it's how people conceptualize where this fits in sometimes, because if it's truly used as a least restrictive alternative, the idea is that it's less restrictive than being in the confines of a hospital wall. But the problem is all the ways in which it can be used and abused. And that's real fears out there of when you have this as an option, to start abusing this option of involuntary outpatient commitments. One thing that we have looked at too across places using AOT is that to what extent is AOT an oversight program that's not just holding the individual to some terms of participating in treatment? Are we holding the provider to terms of providing good treatment, like you're exhibiting examples, help them get a job, help them get into the apartment they want to be in, help them meet those needs so that at some point when the order goes away, they are invested in maybe seeing that there's value in getting services because they see the needs that were being met, or they walk and they leave and go somewhere else. But there's a lot of, I think people's fears is just the many dangerous ways in which this gets used and abused, and not necessarily always implemented in the ideal way it could fit in if we provide accessible, high quality services in all the places, including housing, that people need it.
Yeah.
I also worry, sorry, just real, When ACT teams are treated as AOTs only, I can't imagine that also doesn't start shaping what the team operates as too, because some teams, they don't get to serve the individual once they are voluntary, which I think that's really concerning, that you don't develop trust and rapport and get to continue that work once somebody goes to voluntary status too.
Yeah. What I wanted to say was, I really appreciate what you said too, because my initial position with Alameda County was for assertive community treatment, among other programs, and then AOT kind of came under me for about a year or so before I went to the forensic division. But in that time, when it came under me, I was doing ACT reviews, but we were never reviewing the AOT team. And a part of me, I was talking with we do have a peer-led group. And, as you can imagine, they're not supportive of AOT, but the county has, moved forward with it. But I thought that for a better quality check, to make sure that the team is at least touching the components of, providing quality services to do an annual ACT for fidelity review on the team to ensure that they're working with the individual, they're meeting the person where they're at, they're providing, positive strength-based treatment goals and planning. And oftentimes when the individual, so AOT is for 6 months at a time, and then it goes before the judge again. And the public defender and the judge is really advocating for the individual. When the person starts to say that, they want to continue treatment, then we try to get them off the AOT team as soon as possible and put them into a consenting program. The goal is to get them into consenting programs, to have them in there. That is our number one goal. The person may be on the team for 6 months to a year usually. And by then, most people move to an ongoing FSP or ACT team that's consenting.
I'd like to share how we do it here in Summit County, Ohio, in Akron, Ohio. We have a really robust AOT program. We work closely with our county alcohol, drug, and mental health board and our probate court, as the AOT are considered civil commitments. The agency I work for, Community Support Services, we are the providing main agency that treats all the folks on AOT. I think currently there's 147 clients committed to AOT at the moment. But part of this is we have a new day court program through the court. So our AOT program is not necessarily an ACT team. They're two separate. You may be on AOT and on ACT. It really depends on the level of care you need. We have some folks that maybe they're multiple hospitalizations or meth-induced, something like that. So they're not truly organically, severely and persistent mental ill. But which is kind of cool is regardless of what team you're on, we take kind of like a stage-wise approach. So if somebody doesn't want to be, on commitment, well, then what's the goal? The goal is to get you off commitment. So we meet you where you are to try to figure out how do we help you navigate this system and get you through. As far as the length of, and then our New Day Court program is that the vast majority of clients on AOT have to present to the court for a status hearing. It's kind of based on a mental health court kind of program. And they may go once every 12 weeks, once every 6 months, every other week. It really depends on how well the client is progressing. And the case managers or the supervisors submit, it's called an outpatient commitment summary. So to the court as a status, are they complying with treatment? Are they seeing the doctor? Are they working? Did they find housing? Have they applied for benefits? So we kind of address the whole, whatever their needs are. And that's kind of cool because our judge takes a very personal interest. And also we've done some work with the, Treatment Advocacy Center on trying to collect some outcomes of how the AOT is working. And also we're working on coming up with a fidelity for AOT so we can kind of see, what outcomes are we really looking for? And obviously it is to reduce the hospitalizations. I don't see it as that big of a barrier to ACT clients because we're really just trying to help them live their life and stay in the community. I mean, that's really the goal for a lot of our folks. Yes, recovery, but we want you housed and we want you fed. Because we have some really sick folks. So it just seems like it all kind of fits right into what we're doing on ACT as far as the intensity of the outreach, the multiple team members reaching out, the daily team meetings, going over what's being shared in team. So I don't see it as conflicting. I see it actually, sometimes it really enhances it. And we are fortunate in our county that it has a little bit of teeth. If you refuse your injection over and over and over, we have crisis intervention trained police officers that will come out and go out and do a wellness check and encourage people to come on in and get their medicine. So it doesn't always work. And sometimes when I think of, ACT fidelity as far as the coercion, some of that every once in a while, I feel like as long as our motives, what is the motive? Is it to be controlling and you have to do this? Then I don't think that's healthy. But if my motive is because I really want to help you live the best life you can live. So that's what we do.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think this is, it is a hot topic. And I think what gets tricky about this is regardless of our motives, I believe all of us want people to live best lives possible and have self-determined lives for sure. What happens sometimes is that for ourselves, for our agency, for whoever, we manage risks, and we sometimes do that in a way that's actually could slip into imposing a bit more on people, especially when it comes to medications, because, being forced to put something in your body is actually a big deal. So I think I understand. I mean, I think all of us can think of folks professionally, personally, that when they are sick, they're so sick. And it gets very tricky around the procedural justice that needs to be in place to make sure that the options of coercing somebody into care is the most benevolent option available, because we've exhausted everything else and the risks are so high. And I think sometimes the distrust is because our systems don't work that well in that way. And that's the problem. And people have seen how poorly they can work, not in the favor of people, because we always go towards risk management in these situations. So I appreciate all the perspectives. This should just be its own talk in the future.
I was just thinking that.
But it's a hot one. And I know because this is an area I've done research into. Yeah.
Well, and we're out of time today, but I think coming back to next time, making sure we've got plenty of time to have the open mic, delving into some of this too. So the next time we're meeting is on May 2nd is our next call as scheduled. And that'll begin our kind of the beginning of our two-part series on the START risk assessment tool. But I think coming back to this, because it's actually something that's happening in our own state, and I'm very curious and concerned for many of the reasons that you all described. How can we best do this in a way that is, thoughtful and person-centered and, just balancing a lot of this. So I think let's stay tuned on this. It's not the last time we're going to talk about it, and really helpful to hear everybody's perspective. Thank you for raising your hands today, Leah, and Lee, and Michael, and Stephanie, and sharing what's happening in your states as well. And we'll keep this conversation going. So we'll see you guys next month, or 2 months, not next month, May 2nd. Have a great spring. Yes. Bye-bye.
Thank you.